You can't get enough 3080s.
I thought the 3090 was better.
It is, but it costs twice as much.
It's only a little bit
I'd
better.
rather have two 3080s than one.
Yeah, you can't do anything with it.
really can't do that though. It doesn't really work.
What was in that computer that Linus had?
430.
There was only
What-
two 3090s.
I say we just order one of
Novel
those and call it a
concept.
day, because that's nice.
Well, I do like
All
the
the nice
water
plumbing.
coolered Founders 3090s.
So today, we're supposed to talk about sound staging differences between speakers and headphones, which we cover on and off just about all the time. It seems it pops up in some of the videos, but we don't,
Yeah, it wasn't a discrete
it's
video.
not a
about-
certain, it's not a specific topic, so.
Yeah.
Obviously, a speaker is going to image or present an image in front of you, way in front of you, relative to a headphone that's against your head. You got speaker drivers 8 feet away or more, and here you got speaker drivers an inch away. So that's probably what needs to be understood, is why that's different.
Well, there's a few things there. You also got the room too.
Room. That's
The
big.
room dynamics can be pretty considerable, and they change the way you're going to perceive the sound in a lot of ways, including Soundstage. You're going to get some reverberation off the walls and whatnot, which have some impact. They give you that roomy feel, and you don't really get a whole lot of that in headphones.
Roomy.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
roomy.
Well,
Yeah,
you
it
go in a
sounds like a
room,
room, yeah.
you make a noise, you clap or something like that in a room, you hear all kinds of echoes and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Speakers
Gives you
sound
the
roomy.
sense. And that exists even when you don't have loud noises. It's not like just because you clap and you hear the echo, it doesn't mean that isn't happening when you're just talking. Like right now, I could hear my noise being
That is a simple
bounced off
test.
these walls.
That is a
Plus.
simple test in a room, which
Yes.
most people probably don't know, but like at shows, we use it a lot too. You walk around the room and clap, and then
Yeah.
see
Rip headphone
what the
users.
reverberation sounds like in a room, so you get an
Yeah.
idea how live it is versus how dead it is.
Yeah, you're the test equipment.
Yeah.
The mic and the source.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
kind of walk around the room, go in the corners, in the middle, see how it differs. Some rooms, you got a lot of weird stuff going on. You'll get certain areas that have all kinds of problems. And a simple test like that can give you a vague ballpark of
You could also
how the
pick
room's
out,
set
like
up.
a lot of times, corners will be an issue.
Yes.
The corners of the room, the ceiling corners in particular, they act like a horn.
Yeah.
The sound hits it like a sharp clap, and then it disperses out, and it actually amplifies can amplify the sound in a specific way. So if you know a room's doing that, and those are areas you want to try to treat with some sort of foamy device.
Foamy.
Yeah, foamy, roomy,
pieces
foamy.
of foam, thick foam, something. They make things for corners, but yeah, that's helpful, because when you get those type of attacks on speakers where you get some sort of sharp noise, that's exactly the part of the room that's going to respond and echo back at you, say, and mess with your brain. Because that's one thing to consider. Like, imaging is done by your brain. Your brain is recreating the image, right? If you have a properly set up 2-channel system, you'll actually have a center image. You'll have vocals tend to be between the two speakers. In a really, really good room with a really, really good setup, they'll float quite well. They won't even sound like they're coming from any particular place. Just kind of they're out there in the middle of the speakers, which that tells you did a pretty good job usually with the room. And
Yeah, I run into this a lot, actually. People that normally don't listen to 2-channel audio and stuff, they hear my speakers and they're like, "Is that center channel on?" It's like, "Nope."
yeah, right. Yeah, because most people really don't have a setup like that.
Sometimes I fool myself. I'm like, "Is this in multi-channel?" No.
If you've never
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
that can be shocking for sure.
Yeah.
Because especially at trade shows, every once in a while you hear a system that's set up really well, and it images like crazy.
Yeah, well, yeah,
It's so shocking because it sounds like there's a whole bunch of speakers, but there's just two.
yeah. That's usually the test of something that's very well set up. It doesn't sound like there's any speakers there.
Right. Yeah, they
That's
can
hard to do, though.
They call it disappearing.
Yeah, right,
Speakers
right.
disappear.
Yeah.
That is difficult to do.
Yeah.
Usually in a show setting, you won't get away with it because it's not your room and
Yeah.
you're slapping shit together. But some rooms get away with it in shows because they've done the same room every year.
Yeah, that helps.
And
That
every year
helps.
they tweak it a little more, bring more treatment.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Especially in the bigger rooms,
Yeah.
though, where you have space to
Well,
get stuff
those
done.
could be a
You're not
problem, though.
jammed.
Yeah.
We have had problems with bigger rooms
Yeah.
being worse. Particularly those those suites, and they have all the windows along the one side.
Oh, that's brutal.
And so
Yeah.
what we did was we just closed the blinds, and everybody's like, "Why do you close the blinds? Because they got a nice view." It's like, yeah, well, it's a wall of glass on this side.
Yeah, right.
you know?
Especially when it's behind the speakers.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It gets kind of brutal. And you are trading off the view especially if you're like in Colorado on the 9th floor,
Yeah.
looking out in the mountains. It's kind of nice to have the view. So we usually will crack them open a little bit, so you could at least the people in the middle can see out.
Well, that, and sometimes it just gets too hot and the AC can't keep up because we got a lot of amps or something in the room. So
Yeah,
you got to
right.
open the window and the
Yeah,
door
right.
or
Let some
something.
air in. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we get people and amps together in a
Yeah.
in a very small room. The
Yeah.
heat adds up. But it's same with a home setting. I mean, you're trading that off, right? You don't.
Well,
you,
yeah.
you always have windows.
Right.
It's the way homes are built.
Well, unless you build a room specifically for
Yeah,
it.
which is
That's rare.
the under 1 percentile.
Yeah,
doing
so
that kind of
imaging.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Headphones, speakers.
Yeah. Right.
That's
So
the
anyway,
difference.
the imaging. Yeah. So.
So
But that's affecting imaging.
Will image differently in different situations.
But yeah, the way the rooms are treated, though, the way the walls are treated, the way what's on the walls, even the furniture in the room,
Mhm.
the number of people in the room, all that does to some extent change the way what reflections are in the room and how much sound bodies absorb sound. I don't know if people realize that, but imaging, in order for imaging to work out, you need some reflections in a room too. You can't just have the room dead. You know, it's tough. Like, let's say you put 2 speakers outside in a cornfield. There's no corn. The corn's cut down.
Okay. It's a field.
It's in a
then.
field.
Just
okay,
a
yeah,
field.
with nothing there, right? And you have 2 speakers, and you're way back, and you're cranking the shit out of it. You probably won't get an image off that system. It's
Yeah.
probably unlikely. You'll hear the
Never
sound.
done that. I don't know.
It'll sound like it's coming from 2 speakers. Yeah, I've never
Yeah,
done it
yeah.
either. It's more likely that you won't get an image from that. And it's because the brain is it's just so open. You need so much power to do that. That the
Well,
brain,
that's a different thing.
the brain just really can't. The brain's creating the image. There's nothing in between the speakers, which I guess I said before. But the brain has to recreate that. It's knowing that you're fooling it, but it's taking the cues from both left and right channel and some of the cues from the room and the reverberations of the room, and it's putting together this image. And I think some of that is practice. I think some people get better at that with practice.
Possible.
You know, unless you're in, like you said, a perfectly set up room where you could just sit anyone down and go, holy shit, how come there's stuff coming from the middle of the room? There's
Yeah.
nothing there.
It is interesting to hear it, and I'm imagining a great deal of people, especially in the headphone community, probably never heard a speaker system that's set up really, really well. And the speakers do effectively disappear in some circumstances, and you can't tell sound is emanating from those speakers. If everything's tuned perfect, you don't hear the sound from a speaker, you just hear placement in the room.
Yeah, you hear the band.
Right. And apparently humans are pretty good at these things, because evolutionarily it seems like it was a significant enough advantage that surprisingly you could find the placement of sounds pretty readily a lot of times. So if you get a system that could replicate exactly what happened when they were recording it, apparently your brain's able to put that back together.
Certainly the recording matters too.
Well, yeah.
Well, the
if you-
mastering.
If you're listening to synthesized music, I don't think you're going to get much of a.
Well, it
you know,
depends who did it.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I don't listen to that stuff, but you get center image on it. There's no vocals typically, right?
Well, they could.
yeah.
There can be vocals.
Yeah.
The vocals will always be centered.
Some of
usually.
it's done well, some of it's done bad, just like anything.
Because
Yeah.
the instruments will be coming from both speakers, and there's not necessarily a drum kit anywhere.
Well,
right?
yeah. But there is one particular track that, like, every time I hear it, it doesn't matter, like, what you listen to it on. It's just, like, so laser centered
Oh, yeah?
on the. It's just like, even on speakers, it's just like right in the middle of your head. I don't know how they did
I
it.
think they
but-
call that mono.
No, it's not though. That's the thing. It's
Oh.
weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's an electronic track,
yeah.
and it's the only one on the album like that. It's like, well, every time.
Well, that's the
Weird.
thing too. It depends on who did the mastering and the recordings, and how they place things on the left and right channel.
What
You know?
system they were listening to and how they were trying to tune it.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times it's always about your reference, trying to understand what you were playing it back on. That could have a pretty big impact on the end result.
there's tricks they use with playing with phase and so on between left and right channels, and you could take an instrument and change the way the left and right speakers or the left and right drivers present it, and you can make it sound wildly spacious. Basically it's a special effect.
This
but,
is the exact opposite of that. It's like the least space ever.
Yeah,
But there's vocals in other tracks on that same album. And they are not like that. So
Yeah.
they must have did it on purpose.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and you could do that again. You could do that for a specific instrument,
Well, yeah.
but not for the vocals or whatever. It just
that's the
depends on how
thing,
you recorded it.
Is everything else doesn't sound like that. Just the vocals. Because
Yeah.
it starts out with other instruments and stuff. And then when the vocals kick in, then
Yeah.
there's like a
Well,
laser.
it's probably
right
a
down the
person
middle.
on a mic in a completely dead space,
Could
like
be.
surrounded with 6 inches of foam type thing. They're in a booth or something where
Could
there's
be.
just no reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you get is the person with the microphone, which relative to everyone else doing everything else being played, it will sound completely different, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Because there is no space to pick up on.
Right.
Right. You're in a dead space, talking and singing into a single
Middle of a
microphone.
cornfield, no corn.
Yeah,
Right,
kind of
right.
like that.
Yeah, it's like that, yeah.
Middle of the cornfield, no corn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's shocking. I guess most things have some sort of room sound with vocals and stuff. And when you don't, when it's that, you know.
Yeah, you'll pick
separate.
up on it. The
Yeah,
mics
but-
will pick up on the reflections and the reverb in wherever their studio is, to some extent.
Yep.
Depends on the studio, how it's treated. But, or if you're playing live, it's a whole different ballgame, because
There's a lot of room
now you're
noise
picking
there.
up. Now you're picking up everybody. Every mic's
Yeah.
picking up everybody else.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. Those
Yeah.
recordings, the live recordings, can sound really cool.
Yeah.
You know, really
Some are
cool
pretty awful,
in terms
some
of
sound great.
Yeah.
in terms of giving you an image. Yeah, but they can. You know, particularly if it's mic'd right, where you got one or two mics picking up a small band playing outdoors somewhere or something.
Well,
Could sound really
it's like
cool.
sometimes, you know, like a CD or whatever album, they have artwork from what it was recorded in. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, it's just like a room with
Yeah.
like blankets over everything, and it's just like
Yeah.
stuff everywhere. You're
True.
like, that is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
you know?
if there's a damn video of it too,
Yeah,
which
right,
is
right.
really cool.
A lot of times you
You
can't
know,
hear it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could hear the room.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you get a good image, a lot of times you can actually hear placement of objects in the room to some extent. Like you could hear where a hard object was placed.
well, you turn when the singer. You could tell when the singer turns their
Yeah.
their face.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden it sounds like they're singing a little bit to one way or the other as they move their head around, if they're looking at someone else in the band while they're singing.
Or
These things are easy to pick up in imaging.
like things like giant, like people with squeaky chairs in like a concert hall or something way in the distance. Like
Yeah.
you hear a little, all right.
Yeah, right. Right, the mic picked it up, and you could tell placement too.
Yeah, it's like
You
way
know,
over there.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the brain, is it has the ability to do that, and you know, I guess we were designed for that. That's why we have two ears. Our ears actually work independently, and the brain combines the two together to
Well,
form
your
the
eyes
image.
are like that too, I guess.
You know, it's timing. What the brain's picking up on is subtle timing cues in the sound from the left ear, when the sound is received by the left ear versus the right ear. And I mean, this goes down, I think, in a microsecond
Well, it
range.
have to. It's like speed of sound over this much distance.
Yeah, in terms of timing,
can't be much.
It's really subtle, which is why it's easy to screw it up too.
Right.
You know, and the brain, where the brain can't localize. There's actually a cool book called "This Is Your Brain on Music," and it comes at it from a number of different angles. It talks about the brain side of it from a psychology standpoint, human nature. It talks about instruments and how the brain listens to these things. It's really about how to listen. And not every chapter may not be for everybody, but there's certainly some cool information on that book. I read it years ago, and it's pretty cool when you start to dig in. A guy interviewed like psychologist about listening, and he really dug into the topic. And it's an easy to read book, but you know, that's something that you really want to learn about, or you know, read about how the brain listens to music. Good book. Amazon, you know, it's probably like $15 or something. So now we talked about speakers in a room. Now headphones are a whole different animal. Now the room is shrunk down to.
We talked about this before, but that's effectively the advantage of the headphone over speakers, because you're shipping the room with the headphone. So in this context, since the room is always so challenging, and you're basically just trying to hear the environment and the recording itself that is laid down in the track, you want to try to minimize the coloration that you add from your own room. So having a uniform room with more or less no issues or minimize issues right out of the box seems like a huge advantage. And that's basically what you get with headphones. You get the room in a box. So you don't really need to be that terribly concerned about these kinds of things. You don't need to worry about the windows, whether or not the shades are open, or the materials the walls are made of, because they don't really make a whole lot of difference
And
in a
that's
headphone system.
tends to be one of the big limitations on headphones in terms of how big of a space they can recreate, because now your brain doesn't have a room. You're not listening to music in a room from speakers. The room is tiny, and so it's so close to your eardrum, the source of the music, that it's way more dependent on the recording as to how much space you're going to get off it.
Yep.
Way more, because you don't have your room creating somewhat of a sense of space like they do with loudspeakers. You know?
Artificial space.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, your head ain't hollow, so it's difficult to recreate a center image in space
Well.
when you're doing it when you got the shit in your head between two sides. You know, so it's not going to work. It's not the same function.
It's also why earpads can make such a big difference in headphones, because you're changing a majority of the room with the earpads. You're changing a lot of the environment that's bouncing around the sound before it gets into your ear. So the materials and the shape, the size, the style of the earpads can make a really big impact on the sound of the headphone sometimes.
As do everything else. Like you think about closed back versus open back. With an open back, at least, you are adding some space. You do have, there's openness to the back rear side, and that kind of presents itself to your hearing too. You can hear, your brain will pick up on the lack of reflections from the back of the headphone as much as it would the reflections coming from like a closed back, which again are messing with the direct signal. So closed backs tend to be much more difficult to image, to create an image outside your head, because your brain's picking up the cues from the driver, and it's picking up the reflections off the backside at the same time. And so what happens is the brain defaults to can't do it, right? It's basically saying, I can't figure this out. And it, rather than it crashing, right? It just doesn't give you an image. It won't you can't fake it. Won't fake it. It won't give you a sense of imaging like it would, like an open back would. So, and even like we talked before, not all open backs are that open.
Well, yeah, that's true. Semi-open,
Yeah.
that's pretty common. But
So you're getting a lot of reflections off whatever's back there.
so it's like you get some imaging. It's like they kind of image, but it's not like having nothing there.
I think it's one of the reasons why people like planers so much, is because they tend to be more open in the back. All right.
Most of them, except for the closed ones.
Yeah, well, except for the closed ones. But like where a dynamic driver, you instantly have a structure behind that, a basket structure,
Yeah.
a magnet structure, usually right in the middle, right where your
Right.
damn ear's picking up
it
reflections.
only gets so open.
Yeah, so
But you could use other tricks then.
you can.
So,
They angle them, they
yeah.
offset them a bit. Yeah, it helps a little bit.
That is probably a commonly missed point, though, because the level of openness is kind of more of a gradient than absolute. Because a lot of times they just say in a spec sheet, open or semi-open or closed. But even closed back, there's considerable differences from the attenuation of ambient noises.
Yeah, what's inside matters.
Yeah. So
the materials
even
it's
if
made
it
of.
says it's closed, it doesn't mean it's really closed. Usually they're not actually closed. They're just mostly closed. They're not entirely like sealed from the
yeah.
atmosphere. There's still some degree
like
of porting
airtight
typically.
closed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, really the only headphones that pay that particular attention to filtering out ambient noise are for noise canceling purposes, like for planes and stuff like that. Then, they're doing half the work, let's say,
Yeah.
just by making a good
It is
seal
true.
and
Yeah,
insulating.
all the new noise canceling headphones, even off, are pretty good.
Yeah, right. That's
so-
how they squeak out these big numbers with
Yeah.
isolation. Is they need
Do
to
a lot
they need to
mechanically.
seal your ear from the external noise
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, they're pretty much hearing
Yeah.
protection, and then also a headphone
Yeah.
with active noise
Right.
canceling.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably drop 30 dB without any noise
Some of them
canceling.
would be a
on,
lot, yeah.
You know?
Well, that's true. We do have those hearing protection with
Yeah,
headphones in them.
Yeah,
It
right.
works good.
yeah,
I mean, they don't sound
Yeah,
great.
for
but,
working with the machines and
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, but
Yeah,
they're
they don't
effective
sound
at
good, yeah.
blocking out noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an extreme, but they're designed to do that, and it's, so you're right. Yeah, the interior, even though the closed backs, all closed backs aren't created equal, nor are all open backs all
Well, that's
created
true.
equal too. Like even like with our Diana, when you look at it, it's open back, but we call it semi-open too, because it's open directly from the back, from the perpendicular from the sides.
Mhm.
But from front and back, it's relatively closed. It's solid metal. So if you have ambient noise or coming at you from front or back, they're still not sealed, but they're way more. They're rejecting that more than they are something from the sides. And it's the same when someone's around you. If you're listening, you worry about someone else hearing what you're listening to. From the sides, it's emanating some sound, not a ton, but some. And as you get, there's not a big speaker. It's a little speaker, relatively speaking. So that sound doesn't carry that far. It's not like you're going to hear it 3 rows away, or it's not going to be that loud once you get at a distance. It's not that big of a driver.
Yeah, it's not like playing a speaker.
Yeah, right. It's not a speaker. Yeah, right.
It's not exactly
it's loud
what
to
people
you
expect.
because
Yeah.
it's on your damn head. But once you get a couple feet away or a meter or so away, it's really pretty quiet, And again, same with if people are in the front of you or behind you, they're really not going to pick up as much because it's mainly emanating directly off the side on a perpendicular. So we call it like it's more of a semi-close. So, and all those come into all kinds of headphones that are Oh, sorry, semi-open, right? Not semi-closed.
Well, I mean, it's the
It's
same
the
thing.
same thing, yeah. Guess you could-
Pessimistic.
Yeah,
version.
maybe we should call it semi-closed.
Semi-closed, yeah.
You know?
Shipping now.
Yeah, right. Now shipping is semi-closed. But anyway, so yeah, but either way, the brain is definitely creating the imaging that's going on using the subtle timing cues coming off the left-right channel. Timing differences from left and right are what the brain's picking up on. So, you know, and that's why equipment's important too. The recordings, the type of music. You know, you always want to try to keep left and right channel pretty balanced in terms of not only level, but equipment. You know, sometimes you could have mono amps, like on stereo setups at home with speakers. You have left-right mono amps. A lot of times amps vary a little bit between each other. So now you're running 2 amps, and if one's a little different, just a little different than the other, it might be gain, it might be something, you know. Or if you plug one into one outlet somewhere, you plug one into another outlet somewhere, you're technically supplying with 2 different supplies of power.
Different link interconnects.
That could mess with
like
you.
that.
That could mess with the brain. The brain will pick up on that, and it messes with its ability to to create that perfect image. So you skew things. You know, it just knows the timing of it.
Yeah, it's way more important with headphones, I think, than speakers.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like because it's like right there, you know.
Yeah,
And then you could hear any little problem,
agreed.
and then it doesn't work.
Right.
It's like this.
Yeah, the magic trick falls apart really
Yeah,
quick
yeah. It doesn't take much.
on headphones.
And there's a lot
yeah.
of points where you can lose it too.
Yeah,
So
right, agreed. Which you got to pay attention, like everything, even with, like we talked about with speakers, you got to pay attention to detail. The room matters, the cabling matters, all those little things, all those subtle things that you key in on are being filtered out if you don't pay attention to them. They're lost somewhere in the system chain. So anyway, I guess, you know, without getting in depth into it, and like I said, that book's a good start if someone wants to read the book. You know, This Is Your Brain on Music. It's got a lot of good information in it. And there's a few others out there that I probably could search it.
Well, if you like that video, give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you want to have any questions for a future video. And thanks for watching.